Hi, brief calculus students. I want to go over solving triangles with cosine and sines. When we solve, we're just trying to find all three lengths, all three angles of a triangle. So I'll use a capital letter for an angle, a lowercase letter for the side. With the right triangle, you're used to tangent. Say tangent here would be opposite over adjacent. The sine of this would be opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse. And then you can use the other angles and solve and inverse and the whole bit. Right angles are really easy. What we're going to do is use the law of sine, law of cosines to solve for any triangle. And as long as we have at least one side and and as one of our three pieces of information, you can solve for any triangle. Okay, now, well, here's a trick question. If you've got this plot of land that's 1 mile by 2 miles by 5 miles, how much should you sell it for? How much would you pay? Well, probably not a good idea to pay anything for it. This actually isn't a triangle. A triangle has to have the two short sides have to add up to more than the third. Otherwise, you don't have a triangle. So that gives us the two properties of triangles. The sum of two sides is more than the third. The angles add up to 180 degrees. So let's use the law of cosines. And it'll work when we know all three sides or a side, angle, and a side. So let's start with Pythagorean theorem with right triangles. It only works for right triangles. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. Well, the law of cosines is going to be very similar. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. But then we'll subtract 2ab cosine c. So it'll be the two adjacent sides and then the opposite angle. And it doesn't matter which one you come from, and you can use this to solve for either the angle or the side. So here's one that's got a side, angle, and a side. So let's go ahead and label this A, B, and C. So in order to find A, we're going to use two opposite sides, square 5, square 10, and then subtract 2 times 5 times 10, and then the cosine of 35. When you go through and simplify it, you find out that A is going to be 6.56 centimeters. So let's write that information in. Now let's go ahead and solve for C, or let's try B. Okay, we fill in the information. Opposite of B squared, so that's 5 squared, and then it will have 6.56 plus 10 squared, and then minus 2 times 6.5 times 10, and then cosine of B. Well, we don't know the cosine of B, so let's just go ahead and simplify this equation. Take the inverse to solve for B, and give us B is 25.9 degrees. And then we'll do the same thing for C. Opposite, adjacent, 2 times adjacent, and then the cosine. Use the inverse, solve, and you get 119.2 degrees. And so when we write all these pieces of information in, we can just do a check. Make sure they add up to about 180. Well, okay, we had some rounding errors. But the two short sides were bigger than, sum was bigger than the third side. Added up to about 180 degrees. This is a solved triangle. If we had side, 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 well, let's go ahead and fill in the information, A, B, and C. So we just use inverse to solve for A, inverse to solve for B, and then in order to find C, let's just use the fact that all of them have to add up to 180 degrees, and that will give us a solution. And I'll stop right here, and then I'll record the law of sines next.